Well, let's talk about DJ because I'm going to ask you guys to go back a month, let's say, and give me your evaluation of DJ as a quarterback, not as a Florida State quarterback, but trying to keep this as neutral as possible. How excited you are and how you evaluate this quarterback edition because he's going to be the guy.
I think he's okay. He's a guy who truly got better at Oregon State than he was at Clemson. Obviously, did not have the talent. They were clearly not the best, one of the better teams in the Pac-12 before he got there. They were okay. Like I said, not bad, but they weren't better than Oregon. They weren't Utah. They weren't obviously Washington. They weren't a lot of these guys. But he went out, and I believe he was a top 16 QBR on the season this year at least top 30. Don't quote me on that, but I know he was one of the tops this season. I believe even higher than Jordan Travis at some point. Hear me what I'm saying. But also when I look at it, I think we look at what happened toward the end of Clemson, and a lot of us judge that. You see a guy who got benched by Cade Klubnik, who I believe had a really good game and had a lot of prestige coming in, and we forget that the kid did not have any. There was just literally no film for North Carolina, and North Carolina's defense wasn't that great for him to be able to come in and do that. But then you saw when somebody had a good month of film on him, like they were able to completely pick him apart and destroy him. DJ went 25 for 7 when it comes to stats, if I remember correctly, this season. Oh, you got it right here. Oh, my bad, 21 for 7. Maybe he scored 4 touchdowns, but it was actually damn near same stats that he had at what actually gives you a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. I'm gonna take that because right now I'm gonna tell you what it's better than, and this is no knock on Brock, but it's better than Brock Glenn is right now. And I would have preferred Cam Ward until I saw something else at Oregon State. When I looked at Cam Ward had just as many interceptions, had more passing yards. But when I looked at what the offense was, the next leading rusher had 300 yards. But when I looked at what Oregon State had an 1,100-yard rusher. So if I want a more balanced attack, which is what we've been running here the last few years with Mike Norvell, this is a guy that might be able to do it. Plus, he's 250 pounds. Like that young man get to moving a little bit. If he's scrambling, it's a business decisions might get made. So I'm not opposed to it. I need that completion percentage to be a little bit higher, but I think at the end of the day, I think he could be a poor man's Jordan Travis.
Yeah, man, I agree with everything James just said. I think a lot of people don't realize how much he kind of carried that Clemson team. He really, really impressed me when they played us. Obviously, they got us that year with him. They really handled us that year. I think, you really saw it this year with what Cade Klubnik looked like the first month and a half of the season and all of Clemson's struggles. I think that really made it obvious that he was doing a much better job of holding that thing together at Clemson and making it look even somewhat reminiscent of what it used to be. I think he was kind of like holding it together with matchsticks. And I think you saw that with, we got the numbers up on the board. You go to a much less talented team in the Oregon State, and he's able to, raise them up 10 points on his QBR, has another great year. I think put him in a Norvell situation. I think you can see the offense get the closest it's been of all the quarterbacks we've had so far to what, maybe like a 2019 Memphis offense, just with, obviously upgrades at all the skill positions and stuff like that. And also, James brought it up, short yardage situations. That's something that we've kind of struggled with. I think we're going to be better there, period, with our running backs. Of course, he's going to leverage the line in a bit of a different way than Jordan Travis did, but he's a load, like James said, and he can get going once he gets going downhill. So I don't think you're going to see a lot more tush push kind of stuff in the offense. I think this year, I don't think you're going to have any problem with those 3rd and 1s, goal line situations. He's going to be great. And then the play action off of that, I just think Norvell is going to be able to have a field day getting him in there. As far as like nationally, in the conference, I don't see it. I don't think he's going to come in here and be a Heisman, but I think he could definitely get you that 3,000 yards and up towards 30 touchdowns, and be a quarterback you can go win the ACC with again, and make a run at probably a playoff.
Yeah, I'm gonna evaluate him before he came here because I have nothing to base off of what he's gonna do here other than projection. Uh, DJU is a game manager. That's what he is. He's pretty good at managing, not turning the ball over. He's had 2 years in a row where he's only thrown 7 interceptions with, 315 attempts and 370 attempts. His last year at Clemson was 370 attempts. In his past season with Oregon State, he's at 315. Your yard average, all that stuff doesn't matter to me. The two numbers that matter is you've gotten 21 and 22 touchdowns in those past 2 seasons and 7 interceptions. To only throw 7 interceptions with 315, 370 attempts, that's pretty solid. That's a game manager. I'm not turning the ball over a lot. I like his pocket awareness. He doesn't get himself into a lot of trouble. And he also does I'm not saying that Oregon State's offensive line is bad. They were average. He was able to get the ball out quick. He technically had 2 targets that were worthy of saying that they could be a bigger talent moving forward. I'm not too impressed with what was around him, other than one guy in particular, which is number 7 in the slot, and that's Bolden. Other than that, I mean, he had a good running back. That's obvious. The run blocking for the offensive line in Oregon State seemed to be a lot better than the pass protection to me. So I'm thinking that what DJU will be at Florida State, getting developed under Mike Norvell to sit there and scheme things together. Maybe we watch a game manager turn into a top-sided quarterback on making. It's about making your quarterback look good. And I think Mike Norvell, with what he can scheme together, can do that. I think he'll be able to scheme some things together, some quick throws, and just some RPO things that I think DJU would be really good at. So I'm anticipating this to be the best ball you've seen him play, based off of what he's going to have around him. He's got an offensive line that's returning that did good enough to protect Jordan and whomever else. And I think that the pass protection for our offensive line is pretty damn good. So I think he's going to be better than the statistics that are up there. By how much, I don't know. But I think that with Mike Norvell's offensive mindset, being able to – it's not about knowing your quarterback's strengths. It's about knowing their weaknesses and keeping them away from it. Don't force them to do the things they can't do. Give them the things that they're good at. It's, they tell you all the time to work, practice, blah, blah, blah. But people would, if you quit focusing on what you're not good at and put all your energy into what you're good at, you're going to be great at something. But we'll see what happens.
That's some life lessons right there, Chris.
What was that?
I said that's some life lessons right there.
Yeah.
Quit focusing on what you're not good at and do what you're good at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I came from a company that tried to do the other way too often.
We've seen that. We've been we've all been witness to that, Mark.
Yes, you guys have seen that to a certain extent. I saw it behind the scenes. Yeah, trying to force round pegs into square holes and forcing people to improve their weaknesses instead of focusing on the strengths. Anyway, my take on DJ here would be, of course, he comes in as a 5-star. He followed 2 legendary quarterbacks. First shot he got at it was when Trevor Lawrence, and this seems like forever ago, is 2020, had COVID, or at least under the protocol couldn't play. And he played against Boston College, a pretty good team, decent team. And he gets down by 3 touchdowns, and then he leads a tremendous comeback, throws for a ton of yardage, and hit the scene running. And then they go to Notre Dame the next week, and he puts up more passing yardage than anybody in the history of that stadium. and they lose in overtime. He puts up 40 points on Notre Dame. Trevor Lawrence comes back, and people, including myself, believed, okay, well, this is the next one in line. Couple things, though, and I'm certainly not saying that he was anywhere close to Trevor Lawrence or Deshaun Watson, but man, somebody just shut off that Clemson wide receiver conveyor belt, because, man, for 10 years, it was as good as it is anywhere in college football. And they didn't stop recruiting, but he didn't have those dudes to throw to that would just outfight one-on-one coverage and pluck balls out of the air and high point footballs. He barely had guys just catching balls right between the numbers half the time. That wide receiver core let him down considerably. And again, I'm not selling him as being as good as the two guys before him, because he's not, nowhere close. But they had guys making plays for him, and they also had better offensive lines. And unfortunately for him, the first game he ever played as the starter was against an all-time great Georgia defense, and they just lived in the backfield that night, and he never really put it together. And as you see, 9 touchdowns and 10 picks that season. He never got untracked, and then he pulled it together pretty well the next season, and maybe they figured out some things that they could do with him. Now he's coming from a place where he had a pretty good quarterback coach in Jonathan Smith as the head coach, who knows quite a bit about playing quarterback at a high level. But I got to think Mike Norvell is going to be the best fit he could imagine in terms of figuring out how he can best get the most out of him.
Well, he lost 2 really good. Like, you got to think in 2020, they lost their big time recruiter in Jeff Scott, and that was the wide receiver coach. That Jeff Scott owned the state of Florida. Like, he was a guy who got what he wanted. And if you think about where the wide receivers were coming from, those Clemson wide receivers were coming from the state of Florida. He had a young man Tampa Bay Tech. He really, especially in the Tampa Bay area, it was known Clemson was getting whatever they wanted in Central Florida when Jeff Scott was there. So you lost him in 2020. Him and Tony Elliott both were co-OCs for so long during Clemson. So I remember I made a joke, again, tongue-in-cheek joke, but during that time we had, during quarantine, we had the whole Black Lives Matters and a lot of other different things. Tony Elliott leaves in 2022, and Dabo made, well, I don't think it. I said, well, Dabo about to find out real quick how them lives matter. And Tony Elliott goes to UVA, and now you lost all of the offensive brain power that was there. And Jimbo tried to handle it in-house in 2022, and that's really where it all went bad. So you lost the opportunity to develop, and now all of those guys that Jeff Scott recruited, you're not having that same type of engagement. You're not having those same type of guys come in. That's why Jeff Scott got fired. Jeff Scott gets fired from South Florida being the head coach. Dabo brings him right back on the staff in a limited capacity. So that's kind of what I also believe happened with DJ. I mean, it's kind of like if you look at Florida State when we were in those dynasty era, you had Mark Richt. Mark Richt was the offensive coordinator for so long, and there was just a consistency. He's the guy who switched Florida State from the pro style in '93 to the up tempo, spread them out, run and gun type offense. So he was one of the guys that made that change happen for so long. Now you go to Jeff Bowden, you try to keep it in house, and it just doesn't work quite the same because he's not that guy. And now Dabo goes and tries to find Lincoln Riley's little brother. Lincoln Riley's little brother who did some things at TCU, but you're not even letting him call the plays. Like you're literally trying to, like, again, if you look at what happened with TCU, bigger than the recruits in the transfer portal, guys, they lost their offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator goes to Clemson, and this is kind of what happened. So there's going to be a step down, but I think with a competence and maturity should bring about results on the football field. So hopefully we'll see that with DJ. DJ, I had it. Oh, I had it. Let me give me a second. I'll bring it back up again. I know how to say his name, his last name. I was doing good earlier.
Uiagalelei.
Yes.
Uiagalelei. You got to put it's two Lilis in there.
It took me forever to remember. It's not so much the pronunciation for me. It's remembering how to pronounce it. Because if I don't say it over and over and over, then I forget. And you got to say,
Uiagalelei.
Yeah,
Uiagalelei.
exactly.
Uiagalelei.
Yep.
Took me a while too, but I think I finally got it locked.
There it is.
I would like to get the other Uiagalelei brother down too.
Yeah.
I know them Oregon people are shaking about that. I haven't heard anything actual about it, but I would definitely like to add another member of the family if we could. But I think everybody kind of hit the nail. It's going to be this best situation. What was that?
Is that just a wish list item, or is there something to that?
I know that some of the Oregon blogs were like melting down. I haven't personally heard anything about the staff being in contact with him, but his dad has made it very clear that he would love for that situation, but he's going to support his kids no matter what. But we'll see. I don't know if anybody else has heard anything about any contact between him or anything, because it would technically be tampering, even though there's no such thing as an employee contract, so there is no such thing as tampering. But yeah, he's not actually in the portal or anything like that at this point. So yes, just a wish at this point.